money could be radically different in so many ways after the pandemic is over, but we don't know yet how they're going to be different. Well, Nancy Collamer, who's on the side of your screen, has some really, really great ideas for you. Quick background on Nancy. She is an author, speaker. She's a recognized expert on semi-retirement. She writes a monthly blog for NextAvenue.org and Forbes.com. She wrote the book Second Act Careers, 50 Plus Ways to Profit from Your Passions During Semi-Retirement. She's very highly regarded, ergo the fact that she's appeared on Nightly News, NBC Nightly News, New York Times, CNN, Wall Street Journal, Redbook, Ladies Home Journal, Marketwatch, Fortune Magazine, a lot. So Nancy, we've already talked about this. You have some phenomenal ideas. I know there's a lot of angst amongst many people, especially those over 50, as to what am I going to do to keep my job, find a job, earn income? What am I going to do? And I can't even figure that out yet. What's the first step?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is to recognize that we are going through a crisis period, that we are living through something that is really unprecedented in our lifetime. If you think back just 1 month ago, your life was probably very, very different.
And by the way, it's early April that we're recording this interview, yes.
Yeah, so the first thing I would say to people is you don't know what you don't know. And it is very difficult and quite frankly, very dangerous to try to predict what this new normal is going to look like. So the first thing is to recognize that and to give yourself permission to say, I don't know what the future looks like.
So don't make any real quick decisions or commitments yet.
Exactly. You don't want to act quickly, because right now, if you act quickly, chances are you are acting out of fear, and that tends to be a really bad place to operate from. So I think there are things you can do right now to help move yourself forward. But if you can hold off on taking action, and let me say, Paul, that said, obviously, if you are in dire economic condition and you need that quick job to fill in now to make money, that's a different story. But for most people, try to use this time now to reflect on what's next and to begin to explore new options, so that when this immediate crisis period passes, you will be in a better place to operate and to take action.
Well, and let's talk through what that looks like, because reflection and research, you know, it could be that, for instance, I still need to keep working and I'm concerned about losing my job, or I have to find a job, or I've been a stay-at-home parent, I've been out of the workforce, whatever. We can certainly look at what we've done in the kind of obvious fashion. But as I've heard other people say, this is maybe a good time to be a little bit more imaginative, go outside those barriers. But how do I kind of identify what those are and what might be right for me and I might be right for it?
Yeah, yep, great questions. So the first thing that I would say is, for as much as people talk about the whole concept of reinvention, but now Nancy, is not a great time to do a complete reinvention.
I'm sorry, you broke up there. So let's.
You know what? You're breaking up.
Oh yeah, we're getting. Okay, let's try. Let's. If you could start your answer. With that's a great question, Paul. No, start it with your answer of okay. So how do we kind of think out of the box?
Okay, it's a great question, and the first thing that I would say is try to think about what's next, not in terms of a complete reinvention, but how can you recycle and repurpose your skills and your experiences in a slightly different direction. In other words, how can you pivot? How can you swivel into what's next? And if you think about your career, careers really have two pieces to them. You have your job function, you're an accountant, you're an HR manager, and you have your industry function. So you're in the airline industry, you're in the insurance industry. The easiest type of career pivot to make is to simply stick with your job function, but to do it in a different industry. And that's something a lot of people are going to be looking at going forward. Clearly, there are certain industries right now that have taken a terrible hit, you know, the airline industry being one of them. But the healthcare industry right now is booming with opportunity. So if you've been an HR manager for an airline, that might be a solution for you, that you can go work for something in healthcare or in a different industry where there might be some opportunity for you. And then if you can't make that type of shift, then you want to look at, well, maybe within my industry, maybe you're in an industry that's doing okay, but you want to somehow shift your job function slightly. So if you've been the person who's been the HR manager, maybe now is the time to get into training or into a different function within HR. The most difficult type of career transition to make is when you simultaneously try to shift both your industry focus and your job function at the same time. And that's a pretty big leap to make.
So that's a really good point, because what you've just done is you've said fundamentally, you're in this sector, which makes you potentially more attractive because you're already in the automotive industry or something like that. Or you have these skill sets and obvious abilities, but applying them to something entirely new and different. What about down leveling, for lack of a better term? You know, well, I've been an HR manager. Your colleague Chris Farrell wrote an article some time ago before the virus about 3 people who had, you know, pretty decent professional jobs, and one's driving a truck for a gold mine. Somebody else is working for an airline as one of those red coats with Delta Airlines, and then somebody else was actually helping cart people around in a hospital, and they loved it and were earning the income that they need. So do you consider that something to think about as well, that you might need to step down on the ladder?
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly for people over 50, you know, Paul, I mean, we've known for years that age discrimination is out there. Over the last couple of years during this roaring economy, which now seems like ancient history, it became a little bit easier for people over 50 to find work. Sadly, I think it's you know, the tide has turned, and now it's going to become much more difficult for people over 50 to find jobs. But one of the things I always say to people is it's so important to think outside the job box. I know everybody wants to find that job with benefits, but that may not be possible right now. And so the question becomes not just what job can I find, but how can I contribute as a freelancer, as a consultant, by taking on projects. It becomes really important to think outside the box.
Well, you raise a really good point. What you just described at the end of your response is AKA the gig economy, which has been growing rapidly across the board. And fundamentally, that's being a freelancer or a contract worker, where you might get hired and never even go into an office or work remotely from anywhere in the world on projects, or we're going to have you help our marketing department for a year or something like that. And so many other variations. The latest number I heard was that 35% of gig workers are already people over 50. And that number is expected, and percentage is expected to go up. And I would also have to think that the gig economy might be the way a lot of companies and businesses are going to have people so that they don't have to onboard them, pay all those costs, and have the flexibility that we've now learned the hard way may be a new reality. So your take on that, and boomers and or people over 50 in the gig economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, one of the things in my role with NextAvenue that I get to do is every year I go to the Indeed.com conference. And for people who aren't familiar, Indeed is the world's largest job search engine. And one of the things I always enjoy about that conference is they have economists who speak about the future of the job market. And I attended last year's conference, and I remember the chief economist saying, you know, we know a recession is coming. We don't know when it will happen or what will trigger it, but we know it will happen. And we know that what happens when a recession hits is that employers quickly decrease the amount of hiring that they do disproportionately to what is happening in the economy. It's an easy thing that they can control, is they just hit the brakes on hiring. Now, that's hard to hear, but that's what happens. But what you have to remember is the work of the company doesn't stop. But rather than hiring people, because when you hire somebody, you have benefits and other costs associated with it, they do hire contractors and freelancers. So we can expect to see the number of job hires go way down, but I think we will also see the number of freelancers and opportunities for people who perhaps start a small business on their own to find projects go up.
Good point. And so in this time of reflection and research, that is something to research of, first of all, a little more thorough understanding of what is the gig economy. On ProBoomer, I posted a short video from Marketplace that goes into Marketwatch, what the gig economy is, and it explains it, and it also talks about people over 50 being a part of it, and to think about how you can transfer your skills. And the big thing, can you do it technologically? You know, can you be set up like this with Zoom and Skype and such, which will be the tools that you'll need in order to share it.
And I think, you know, that's been one of the good things about what's going on right now, is people are getting practice with things like Zoom, and they're learning these work from home technologies, not by choice, but because it's the only way that they can connect with their kids right now and their grandkids right now. So I think actually that will be something positive that will come out of this. And you're absolutely right that I think that will be a trend that we will see emerge from this whole pandemic, is opportunities for work from home roles, whether that means as a work from home employee or as a contractor or freelancer, are going to become more commonplace because companies have been forced into this. And in some cases, they're saying, wow, you know, we can't wait to get back into the office. But I suspect there are a lot of companies that are saying, wow, this has actually proved to be really interesting. And it's actually works a lot better than we expected. So I think that's another potential piece of good news for people, particularly as they get older and they may not want to commute to work and they're really looking for things that they can do from home. I'm hopeful that this will help to generate more opportunities for good work from home, professional jobs going forward.
Yeah, good point. And also, just for the sake of clarity, I kind of define the gig economy in two different sectors. One is like an Uber driver or someone doing some sort of personal service work. But the other one's more the professional thing, where you go on Upwork or Fiverr and you know, graphic artists or IT people or administrators or things of that sort. And the beauty is, and I think for anybody, but especially people over 50 who are kind of like, well, I still need an income, but I don't want to go into the office. I don't want to have to commute. I don't want to put in 40 or 50 hours a week. This gives you that life flexibility as well as plus new and different things. So there's a lot of potential upside for people's lifestyles with this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to that point, Paul, you know, I've kept my, obviously I've kept my eye in the space for a number of years now. And one of the good things that is happening is there are more and more platforms that are out there for people to work in the gig economy in all sorts of different ways that you might not have even thought of before. So there are sites where you can, you know, if you're a writer, where you can find really high quality writing jobs, or if you're somebody who's looking for ways to resell, you know, items that you have in your homes. There's a variety of places that you can do that. A great site is a site called Side Hustle. It's spelled HUSL.com. And on that site, you will find literally hundreds of gig platforms where you can find all sorts of different ways that you can either use your talents as a gig worker, or you can sell items. And this is also, this is a big area that is growing and evolving, and I think holds real promise for older people and possibilities for people in retirement. And, you know, I've interviewed people for NextAvenue who have taken advantage of these gig platforms. I remember a conversation I had with a gentleman who had been a vice president of a company, but his real passion was dogs. He just absolutely loved animals. And so he decided he would sort of test it out by going on Rover.com. He thought, you know, I don't want to invest all the time and money in building my own website and marketing my own business. Let me try doing this through Rover. And by using that platform, it was really easy for him. He was able to quickly set up a web presence through Rover, and he became a dog walker. And he, at the time I interviewed him, he was earning about $1,500 a month, and he absolutely loved it.
Yeah, that's it. So the bottom line here is that to kind of bring us back up to where we were, don't make any quick decisions now. Use the time for reflection and research. So that reflection or that research is certainly just like what we've been talking about. Research the gig economy, research, you know, something like that. In the reflection thing, it's certainly what are your skills? What are you good at doing? Where are your gaps in doing something what you do? And the next thing you suggested that we talk about, which I love, is that, you know, what role you want to play in your life going forward. And we've been kind of talking about that. Yeah, the thing that I think, this is an aspirational thought, but this is also how we get where we want to go in life, right? Is that if I've got to make a change, like you said, if I've got an immediate dire situation, I've just got to get something right now. But you also still have to think about long term. But if you do have time, it's like, well, as long as I have to change, I'm going to change in a direction I want to change in. That being over 50, I know better, and it's important for the rest of my life going forward that I'm doing something that I want to do and that I find fulfilling. That just seems like a really strong likelihood and at least aspiration to undergo all this, but your take on that.
Yeah. So I think a really important question to ask yourself is, when have I added the most value? And this can be in both your personal life and in your work life. Because when you have the ability and the skills to add value, that is always attractive, whether it's to an employer or to potentially somebody to hire you on a, you know, again, on a freelance or project or contract basis. But really think about, when have I added value? What were the projects that I was handling? What were the skills that I was using? When did people really say to me, wow, you did, you know, that was a great job that you did? when did you feel really valued by other people? And when you reflect on that, I think it can help you connect not just your skills and your interests and the things that you enjoy doing, or bring clarity around those things, but it connects those things to a need that in the marketplace. And at the end of the day, all businesses are really set up to solve problems. And so the question becomes, how can you be an agent of change? How can you be of service? How can you be of value in a way that other people really, and when I say people, organizations, businesses really need right now?
Yeah, and that's a really, 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 really big point. Because I think of an interview that I did last week with Karen Sands, who's Forbes Magazine said ranked as one of the top 50 futurists, women futurists in the world, and she talked
Sure, I know
about.
Karen.
I'm sorry. Oh, you froze up. Okay.
Yeah, you did.
What's that?
You did too.
Okay. All right. I
You
think
had
we're
a
back
better
on.
connection.
You brought up a really good point that I've heard others, including Karen Sands, who's a futurist that I did an interview with last week, and that is that in this different world that we're going to have post-pandemic, you need to find the intersection between your skills, abilities, and desires with what people are looking for, what companies are looking for, businesses are looking for, or whatever. Like Wayne Gretzky, the famous hockey player, said, when somebody said, why are you so successful? He says, because I don't go to where the puck is, I go to where the puck is going. So that was a key point that you brought up. A second big point that you brought up in this is like, okay, how do we effectuate all this? I've got all this stuff going on in my head, possibilities and stuff, and it gets kind of hard to sort it all out. So your next thing was network, use your network, expand on that.
Yeah. I cannot stress this point enough, that the big advantage people have when you are over 50 is that you have had many, many years to create both personal and professional networks. And Paul, I mean, we can't predict what this new economy is going to look like right now. We can pontificate on it, but the truth of the matter is we don't know. But the one thing I can say for sure is that the way you are going to find your next opportunity, whether that means a job or a project or a freelance opportunity, or perhaps just an interesting way to volunteer in retirement, is almost certainly going to be through your network. And so now, while everybody is hunkered down at home, is actually a really, really good time to reach out and connect with people who you have not spoken with in a while, or people who you might be in contact with, but now you have an opportunity to have a really meaningful 1-hour telephone conversation with them. Go through that list of contacts on your LinkedIn profile and say, hey, would you be interested in doing a virtual coffee meeting for 30 minutes? I'd love to hear what's going on with you, what you're working on. Let's just connect that way. We all have so many connections that we are very sort of loose connections. They're second or third party connections. And now is a golden opportunity to really turn those into strong connections. And that's the way you are going to find the next opportunity going forward. Now, I do want to be very clear here that I'm not suggesting you reach out to your network and say, hey, how can you help me find my next job? That is not what this is about. It's about establishing meaningful connections, having good conversations, finding ways you can help that other person, and establishing that foundation. And then down the road, when you are actively job searching, then you have a real connection with that person.
And that's a very good point, that in the first place, it is it is reconnecting and seeing where it's going. And at the very least, that reconnection could be beneficial down the road. That person thinks of you when they see an opportunity or whatever. The other thing I've found, I mean, in general, it's kind of a masterminding light, if you will, in which you're connecting with someone, you're hearing about their situation, you're sharing, they have ideas for you. But I got to tell you, sometimes when and this happened yesterday, I was helping somebody else with a challenge that they had. And it gave me like two major realizations that I apply to what I'm trying to do. So it's just a wonderful thing to do. It's a healthy thing to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Can't stress that enough. And like I said, right now, there's a lot that you can complain about right now and a lot of things to be worried about. But the big asset we all have right now is time, and the fact that most people are hunkered down at home. So make the most of that.
So this has been great. Don't make quick decisions. Reflect and research. Think out of the box. Look at new possibilities. Do the research about learning about gig economy or what other sectors or other ways that you could apply your talents and skills. As long as you're at it, think about it in a context of which, as you say, you provided the most value to yourself and to the endeavor or the people that you were serving. Make it potentially in a lifestyle situation that you find beneficial. Greatest asset that we have is our networks. Use it. One thing that we didn't go over, and I know this is a big thing, and that's skills. So in these pivots or changes of direction, we may see that we're lacking some skills. And I know that what I've heard from some people in the job industry, that one issue sometimes with older workers is that they're not skilled up, quote unquote. Your take and suggestion on that?
Yeah, again, this is the best time to take advantage of all of the free online learning opportunities that are out there. First, obviously, you need to really think about what it is that you might do next, and then assess where your gaps are. And once you establish, okay, I need to learn this technical skill, or I need to learn more about how to do, X, Y, or Z, then take advantage of all of the free online learning that is out there. And there are places like Coursera, there is Lynda, which is the learning portal through LinkedIn. And by the way, a lot of library systems, you can connect to that through library systems for free. There are entrepreneurs who offer training on different types of things. Again, oftentimes they do introductory classes for free. So this is just a wonderful time to think about, okay, what skills do I need to acquire, and how can I go about getting those skills? And so I'm so glad you brought up that point, because it's really, really imperative that people continue to take advantage of learning opportunities while they are at home. And it also gives you something that you can put on your resume and talk about during an interview to show that you have been proactively learning and moving your career ahead.
And that is a huge point that you just touched on, that again, with some of feedback from hiring managers and such, that the issue with the older worker that they'll argue isn't ageism, it's the fact that that person isn't up to date or doesn't indicate that they've tried to stay up to date. So for instance, a lousy LinkedIn page says this person's not in the groove of the way the world is now, period. And that's a legitimate telltale, especially when you have 1,500 applicants and you're almost looking for reasons to get rid of people to
Absolutely.
consider. But being skilled up and for instance, you can get certification, like let's say it's some web-based thing. You can be Google certified, you can be LinkedIn certified, something like that, that shows that, oh, wow, this person's really up to date. And if it applies to a business or what you're doing, that's all the more critical. And last but not least, there are also paid certifications and training. If it's something more involved, be very, very careful. Look for the reviews and such, because some people promise you the moon and give you a junkyard. So, that's a huge point. So one last thing, really want to value your time here and really appreciate this. This is really phenomenal stuff that people will find so useful. So overarchingly, when we got on this interview, you said that just this morning, going for a walk and practicing social distancing, you got an idea for a new blog post that was along these lines. Please share that with us.
Yeah, so I always say I do some of my best thinking when I'm out and walking, and of course I have lots of opportunity to do that right about now. And I was thinking, it's such a challenging time for people right now, and it's so easy to feel overwhelmed. And yet it's so important to focus on the things that you can control. And I thought, okay, what would be a couple of steps that I would say to people? These are things you can do right now to help calm yourself down, to feel like you've got better control over your situation, and hopefully it will help you move forward. And really, they are many of the steps that we've talked about during the interview. So the first one is to reflect, to take some time to think about, what do I do well? What have I accomplished? When have I been of greatest value? And all of those questions, and by the way, Paul, website, I have a free download for people who sign up for my free newsletter.
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. You have a free download? Oh,
yes.
We broke.
So I have a free workbook on the site. It's of 25 questions and now is a great time to work on that. So people go over to my website at mylifestylecareer.com, you can download that. So reflect is the first step. The second step is to use this time to investigate. As we've just been discussing, investigate classes, investigate new ways that you might be able to pivot within your career. One of my favorite resources is industry associations. Can be a great way to get a new certification or to learn about little niches within your industry focus that might be a good place for you to consider, as I said before, pivoting into. So that's the second step, is to investigate. The third step, as we talked about, is to connect, to really reach out to your network and establish meaningful connections. And the last step is something that we didn't talk about, but it's help. It's find a way to help during this time period. I think you will find, clearly the need has never been greater, but by helping others, you will help yourself. And so those 4 steps, again, it's reflect, investigate, connect, and help. And oddly enough, what I realized was those 4 words begin with RICH, and it's rich. And I think if you do those 4 things, it really will enrich your life. As I said before, it's going to open up possibilities for you. It's going to make you feel more in control of your life. It's going to give you hope. And I think when you have all of that, your ability to find good employment opportunities, to find good freelance possibilities, expand over time.
So RICH, reflect, investigate, connect, and health. And we'll be seeing help, excuse me. Oh, health and help, right.
Health is important too.
Yeah, excuse me. Fantastic. And we'll be seeing that blog soon on NextAvenue, right?
On my lifestyle career.
Excuse me, lifestyle career. So Nancy, this has been absolutely fantastic. This is such useful and helpful information and perspective that I'm going to say, I really hope we do another interview very soon and take this even further. So thank you so much and stay healthy.
Great. Thank you.